So a lot of my projects start out at Home Depot, and this one was no different. I ended up buying 3 of these 8-foot long melamine shelves for about $24 each. Next, I'm going to take one of the 3 shelves and cut them down to size depending on how tall you want the media console to be. And after all was said and done, I think I ended up needing about 8 of these pieces. For this next step, I'll be making 2 separate shallow channels using the table saw with all the pieces we just cut that I have clamped together here. And the groove I'm making is going to be about 1/4 inch deep and a little under 3/4 of an inch wide. Now take one of those pieces and use it as a guide to make marks on one of the 8-foot long boards as to where our next cut will be. So for here, and looking back, I have no idea why on earth I decided to do this inside, but I'll be using a 3/4 inch and I believe it's called a mortising router bit to make 2 channels down the entire length of one side of the board at a depth of 1/4 inch. And here I'll be doing the same thing for the other groove. So this is where your personal preference is going to come in as far as how wide you want the spacings to be. And when you're coming up with a plan here, make sure to take into consideration the size of the items you'll be displaying. Next, I'll be measuring and marking the board, so when I flip things up to begin securing, I won't have to remeasure and can simply line things up with the marks. Since I'm not too worried about making this super strong, I'm just going to be using some 1.5 inch brad nails to secure things together, but you could certainly drill pilot holes and use traditional screws if you wanted to make things more sturdy. And here I've already flipped the board around and started putting nails in on the other side, and I'll be putting one more in down the middle as well. Next is the fun part. I'll be using these super shallow diffuser channels from Amazon that come from a company called Nuzada, and they're going to work perfect for this build. You can get them in black or silver, and being that I had some leftover black ones from a previous project, I'll be using that color. So these diffuser channels are super light, and I don't want to have to deal with screwing them down, so I'm just going to use a little bit of wood glue, and that should keep them in there just fine. As for the LEDs, I'm going to be using some SK6812 strips from BTF Lighting that have 60 LEDs per meter, and I'm going with these since they have a separate LED to control the white color which I want for this build. And if you're at all curious on how to get the LED strip to look like this, I made a how-to solder tutorial that breaks things down on the basics and shows close-up footage of how easy soldering actually is. But if you didn't want to go this route, you could just use one of Govee's new M1 strips that I've already done a couple videos on going over how versatile the product is for a plug-and-play solution. Here I'm going to be removing the sticky tape from the 2 identical strips that I've made and securing them into the channels. And these channels also come with a diffuser cover that you may or may not choose to use. I would recommend experimenting with them on or off and see what you like best. I'm going to be running these 2 strips in parallels. That means the data will be split coming from the controller, and both the lights will do the exact same thing at the exact same time. I'll show you how to get everything wired up, and for reference, the red wires are my voltage, the black is the ground, and the blue and yellow will be my data. Traditionally, the data line is green, but I ran out of that color, so I just used what I had left. And one other thing to quickly point out is that there's little arrows on the LED strips that indicate what direction the data is going. Make sure those arrows on both strips are pointing in this direction. Now I mentioned the controller, and I'll be using WLED installed on an ESP32 Wi-Fi board, and you can check out the video I already made going over those simple steps to get things set up. And in the soldering video that I already mentioned, I go over how to get the wires connected to the pins like you're seeing here, but for this device, the red wire is my voltage, white is my ground, and green is data. So this is actually really simple, but it might look complex due to all the wires, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible to follow. First, I'm going to take 2 additional wires and I'm going to attach the red one to one of the 3 positive terminals on the power supply, and for reference, I'm using an extra 5V 30 amp unit that I had laying around. Next, I'm going to take a 5-slot Wago connector and insert and snap in place the red positive wire coming from the power unit. Now I'm simply going to take all the other red wires, 2 from the LED strips and 1 from the ESP device, and insert them into the other slots of the connector and snap in place. The 5th slot will not be needed. Now I'm going to take my additional black wire and put it into the first negative terminal on the power supply, and I'll be doing the exact same thing we just did, but this time all the ground wires will go into the connector, which are the 2 black ones from the LED strips and the white one from the ESP device. And finally, the green data wire coming from the controller will be put into a Wago connector, as well as the data lines coming from the LED strips, which are my blue and yellow cables. Now I just need to go ahead and set the LED board on top, and I'll again be using my brad nailer to attach. And to finish off the back, I got this from Home Depot. I'm not even sure what it's called, but one side is a glossy white finish and the other side is black. I'll be securing this to the back, but make sure that the white side is facing in. The last thing I'm going to do is just use some basic white cord cover and drill a couple holes on the bottom to feed my wires through to better help hide them from view so they can be placed out of sight behind the console. This is also another plus of using Wago connectors, as you can snap and unsnap the wires in seconds. And if you want to clean up your cut edges where the wood is exposed, you certainly can just paint it white, or you can get this white melamine edge banding that goes on with the hot iron. I'm still not sure what I'll be doing, but at least those are a couple options I'll have. So at this point I'm pretty much done. I just have to get things plugged in and I'm ready to go.